By these oddball things, you need to make sure that the core and the fundamentals are there for your team, and they just have not been for UOL quite as much. Sometimes they have these great moments of brilliance, and other times it's just not so good for them overall. However, now that we are in picks and bans, Fizz already taken off the table, taken away from Expect after that phenomenal performance against H2K in Game 2 yesterday. Shen similarly taken off the board, a pick that we have not really seen outside of the game from Fnatic coming in this week, so slowly gaining in popularity here.
Yeah, we've seen it over in LCK a couple of times. We saw it actually in European Challenger that we were casting earlier this week as well. So European LCS, haven't seen too much of it, but yesterday it caused a pretty big problem in that matchup when we had a Shen with Rift Herald up against the Maokai, and it's just like, oh, I guess I can't do anything here, and I just get shoved
joys
in.
of Rift Herald. Absolutely, the guaranteed way to win lane, no matter what you're playing, and Shen, of course, especially comfortable when he's got that buff. Trundle taken off the board as well. Bard and Caitlyn going to round out the bans here for Unicorns of Love, so making sure that playmaking support is not available for Mithy, and of course, Caitlyn, I think, rising to top tier in terms of AD carries.
And it was G2 getting caught out by the Bard yesterday, perhaps, that really upset that first game with H2K. However, Mithy played Karma in the second game and had a really solid performance from it, and that is a fast set of bans and picks.
All right, Alawi taken off the table, taken away from Vizicsacsi. I'm almost willing to say the first Alawi target ban, but G2 maybe not comfortable playing around the pick, do take it off the board, but Chachi with the quick response takes the Irelia away from Expect.
Now there's a lot of options available here, and for G2 to pivot here, if they go for a damage-based jungler like a Kindred that we've seen Trick play a lot of, they can then run something like a full tank in the top lane if they wanted to run a specific matchup into the Irelia. We haven't yet seen matchups like the Malphite come back in, which are very good at containing Irelia for the majority of the game. It's something I'm expecting one or two teams to experiment with, especially with some of the teamfight focus we're seeing coming out. So I don't think G2 are the team that are going to do it right now in the first rotation of this draft. It's a little too early for that, and they are opting towards a tank setup.
Interesting selections coming in here, and fast response from Unicorns of Love. 2 seconds there to figure out their second rotation. Of course, Ryze and the Rek'Sai coming through on the side of G2, but UOL know exactly what they want, and it's going to be that Azir in the mid lane for Exileh. Well, the Gragas in the jungle for move.
They've got one strong solo laner, now they want a strong mid laner in that stick them there. Don't ever have Azir move away from the position and just hold in the mid lane. For Exileh, he's been playing a whole bunch of different things. We've seen the Yasuo a number of times from him when you look at their series. Didn't quite catch all of yesterday's games, but Exileh has played one game of Azir coming into this week, and it was not a good game. 0-7 for him in that performance.
Absolutely suffering. You know, what we saw from him coming in from those early weeks, we saw a lot of eager attempts to make plays, but just not quite able to follow through, getting a little bit outplayed in those individual matchups. Did have some excellent Ryze play, but of course that has been taken off the board, so maybe in the last few weeks he's had more chances to practice up here, and maybe Unicorns of Love, as we said, maybe wanting to stick to the basics here. Azir, a very consistent mid laner. Let Exileh practice these champions, get him up, get those skills together, bring the team together. And on the opposite side, of course, G2 going to start to round out this composition, picking up the Maokai and the Ezreal here.
And considering how G2 have typically been a very early aggressive team, at least in a lot of their dominating performances, they kind of get a lead early and just never let it go. In this scenario, they're running a Ryze, they're running an Ezreal, picks that need a little bit more time. It's not like they've got a top lane carry here as well, Maokai. Not like they've got a jungle straight carry here as well with the Rek'Sai. So now what is the final piece of this puzzle that's coming out from the support from Mithy? I'm very interested because they've got a very solid front line here to protect the Ezreal and the Ryze.
Yeah, very interesting overall. Wondering if it's going to be the Karma this time around. Of course, we talk about Ezreal as a slow scaling pick, but we saw yesterday, G2, you give him an inch at any stage of the game, picks start to scale significantly more quickly. Of course, Sivir going to be locked in, as well as the Nami to finish out this UOL composition. So a lot of mobility here and range support coming in for Hylissang.
And a whole lot of disengage coming out of the Unicorns of Love here as well. Yes, you can obviously use all of these abilities in the secondary engage as well, but you've got a Nami, you've got yourself an Azir, a Gragas, all of these champions good at avoiding fights. And then if Chachi can get out on the side lane, get so far ahead that Expect can never contain him, then this could be a potentially difficult game for the G2 the longer it goes when it comes to how they can actually start fights. But you've got a Maokai, you've got a Rek'Sai. If we see some movement speed like a Karma come out here, that will help G2 get those engages, because once they get close, they have fairly reliable engage.
Absolutely, and a lot of sustained damage coming in here from this Ryze as well, but UOL, I really like what they're bringing to the table. There's nothing out of the ordinary here. Irelia, Standard, Gragas, the Azir, the Sivir, the Nami as well. It feels like a very well-rounded composition from them, and it looks really powerful, honestly.
Which is funny because we were talking about how, you know, we didn't really want to see Unicorns do anything that was wild and crazy, where we've got 3 of the different picks, the Jhin, the, you know, the Yasuo, that. So I like that they're trying to run something that's a little bit more straightforward when it comes to a lot of the meta picks here. And with the Soraka locked in, I mean, that lane's going to be pretty difficult to kill or do anything against the Ezreal Soraka. And it's just like you're never killing Ezreal.
I'm wondering if they're going to look for the lane swap here, because Zven and Mithy just seem like they're going to have to be content for the entirety of the early game to just be under tower and farm up. Because you look at Nami, so good at trading in lane, Sivir so good at pushing the wave, and Ezreal can be strong. We saw yesterday if you get those early advantages, obviously, rush that tier early. But I don't think it's going to be quite as explosive as the game we saw yesterday.
Well, the one benefit to that would be that they could then put Vizicsacsi behind fairly significantly if they can get a good early phase of the lane swap. So honestly, it's going to have to come up as we load into this game. Obviously, Dragon is going to, you know, influence it ever so slightly as well. The picks as well, if you want to put that Irelia behind, is going to play into it fairly heavily.
Absolutely, and you see the two coaches shaking hands here on screen. Both probably pretty content with their draft. A lot of comfort picks and a lot of power on both sides, but gearing up for this game, I mean, who do you think has the advantage overall coming out of Picks Advance?
I still have to feel like G2. Just as an overall sense, G2 have been performing a whole lot better than we've seen out of the Unicorns. So for me, they are still the team to beat here.
But of course, this is it. Game 1, Unicorns of Love versus G2. Tweet out hashtag UOL win if you think they can pull away with this new composition, or G2, you think they've got what it takes to ball out the first game here on EU LCS.
Oh man, it's going to be a tough one for G2, but I like their setup. I like what they've been going for. Let's see if they can execute it any better than we've been seeing from the last couple of days.
A lot of opportunities here. Find those improvements. Taking a win off G2 would be, I don't want to say unimaginable, but would be a very impressive feat coming in for the Unicorns of Love. Of course, struggling throughout this season.
Someone is happy to see Chachi playing Irelia. And honestly, part of me from my days of casting Unicorns long time ago, I'm happy to see Chachi in a meta where typically I've known him to succeed, and that is one that he can solo carry. He's always had these oddball picks, or, you know, strong carry-focused picks from the top lane that he used to be able to carry on. We haven't seen that out of Chachi in a very long time, so I'm looking forward to seeing if he can get back to things with picks like this Irelia.
And very interesting on the opposite side as well. Expect not picking up the Irelia or the Fizz on this tanky Maokai. This is normally a pick we would expect from Kikis as a top laner, but we really haven't seen Expect on these tanks yet. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, and if Chachi gets the lead or gets that Rift Herald, you can imagine that the amount of pressure he'll be able to put down will be pretty rough for G2 to deal with.
And that's one of the most intriguing things, because as we were talking about, it's not like Expect is a wildly different player to Kikis as well. So they have a fairly similar style from what we've seen, just have slightly different strengths and weaknesses when it comes to their you know, team play, coordination, that kind of thing that, as we said, Expect has started to work on. So we are in a lane swap. Zven and Mithy are going to go and interrupt the Gromp first, and then Mithy is going to go and try and interrupt on the Wolves. As we see Keystones.
Mithy's very persistent. Just throwing out those auto attacks.
Always persistent is Mithy in the harassment early.
Yep.
Got some decent damage down.
Not going to slow down the jungle clear too much, but we'll make it a little bit rougher. They do move down to the bottom side there. Expect pushing forward, getting a little bit cheeky there, running into melee range of Veritas, but just a small trade of blows. Maokai's going to want to get out of here quick because there are people moving in.
Yeah, he's going to have to bail, and if he wants to get top, he's going to have to use his teleport, but Expect runs into Chachi. I don't think he realizes that Move is here as well. Move's going to let him go. They don't know that Rek'Sai is topside. They would really expect the jungler for G2 to be bottom side here if Expect is just running through his jungle. Move completely misreading what is happening there, but didn't have the information.
This is the eye for an eye trade. They're like, we don't want to kill. We just want to let you know that Mithy hit us. We're going to hit you. That's the trade.
Oh man, that's a bit of a blunder there by the Unicorns, not taking advantage of that. Of course, the regular information in that scenario would be that why would the Maokai be on his own there under pressure in his own jungle. So very strange that Expect did not get taken out there. But obviously now with the assisting on the tower push here, it did allow Chachi to get over there a little bit faster. And Unicorns, when it comes to how it's going, they have to wait for the next wave to come in before they can actually take that tower. So it's going to slow them down and put them about on even footing with G2.
Absolutely, and of course, gonna have to see what comes next, what the next step of this lane swap is going to be. Infernal Drake on the bottom side has been a huge point of contention for teams in the past few weeks.
It has been, but in this situation, Expect had to use his teleport to get back to the top side, whereas Chachi has not used his TP either. So we're gonna have to now see where resource allocation goes to, because Chachi is gonna want to absorb as much of that bottom wave as he can to try and get himself through the matchup. I'm slightly expecting G2 now to go bot side and maybe UOL to keep their duo lane bot side if they even value the dragon. But they're actually going to head back top lane, so we're not going to see the single tower push into standard lanes that was delayed that we've seen a couple of times already. We're just going to go to a standard phase 2 swap.
Moving on to the top side of the map, looking to trade another tower. Of course, with a few more levels under their belt, G2 may feel comfortable enough to push for that Infernal Dragon. Has proven to be a huge boon as we move into later stages of the game, but neither side giving up too much quite yet. Chachi getting aggressive here. Exhaust goes down. Summoner spell committed. How much more are they going to be able to get? Looks like a decent amount of poke. Moving forward. Silence field trying to stop any advances. Are they going to die for this? Flash forward. Mystic shot not going to connect. Aggressive moves coming in from G2.
And this is exactly the same mistake we saw from Vizicsacsi in one of the games towards the end of last split. Wow, Perk dropped so low.
All right.
Under the tower. Is that Chachi spots two people walking over a ward into his lane, and he stays to try and farm it out. And it cost him his life last time. This time it has cost him his flash. And now he's going to TP top lane to try and push on this tower a little bit faster, because as you can see, Maokai and Rek'Sai only just heading into the jungle. So Unicorns trying to get that push on a little bit faster once again.
And a small tempo advantage here overall. Maokai, of course, already using the TP earlier in the game means he's going to be quite late to the bottom side of the map.
But look at what Zven and Mithy are doing just to try and offset a little bit of the difficulty that they'd normally have. Zven just sits in front of the wave, and Mithy's just going to constantly heal him up, because they're realistically not under any threat for the next few minutes. So it doesn't matter that Zven's taking a little bit of damage, then Mithy trades it for his health. It allows them to prevent the minion wave from pushing up to their own, and actually allows them to, get their push a little faster, but it's still the Unicorns that are coming out ever so slightly ahead, about 5 or 6 seconds on the tempo advantage for them.
Should be a solid advantage. G2, though, responding with something of their own, going to contest this Infernal Drake. Burning through it pretty quickly. It doesn't look like there's going to be any kind of opportunity to come in here from Unicorns Alone.
And this all stems from the bot lane going topside for Unicorns. That's what you give away on that. In goes Exile.
No! Emperor's Divide, flash out from PerkZ. Good movement from Move. Goes into the mid lane, and first blood dropping for Exile.
This has been a lot better out of Exile. He's had more control in this game through the early game. Expecting the bottom lane gets tagged, but it's nothing too much more. And good comboing from Move to come into the lane. Exile pushes him the right way, forces out the flash early from PerkZ, and despite Move not even having access to his ultimate yet, successful gank early on.
I really like this coming out. We see the CS advantage for Exile, and we'll take one more look at this play and how exactly he executes.
Yeah, shoves him right over. Good flash into the minion line, but catches PerkZ with it as well. Just pretty crisp there from the Unicorn. So that's something that we haven't seen all that much of when it comes to consistently making those plays. We've seen good starts out of Exile and Move, but we need to keep seeing that again and again now as we go further through this game.
Absolutely. First blood, of course, going to be a nice boon to have, a good advantage overall, but it will not win the game on its own. Got to keep our eyes on Move going forward. Try not to say moving forward. Definitely a trap.
It's okay. Don't worry. People will expect you to make those mistakes sometimes.
Name
when
puns.
You say the same word, the name, the puns. It's awful. It's a difficult one in this game. We've got a lot of them here.
I will not fall for those tricks.
No, stop it.
Okay, we're done. All right,
stop it.
Moving back in, it looks like Rift Herald is actually going to be a point of contention here, and giving this over to Maokai could make it much easier for him in the 1v1 lane versus Vizicsacsi. Though admittedly, still don't know how friendly that matchup is going to be. Irelia, of course, with so many tools to deal with tanks. True damage, the stun, the high mobility. Obviously, very good reason for her to rise in popularity. You can see on your screen, Rift Herald, 5% damage reduction, as well as essentially an additional static shiv as long as there's no champions around. So very good buff to have. Just about any stage of the game, and of course 20 minutes as well, so.
It's one now to deny away from the Irelia. This is actually the earliest Rift Herald we've seen this split so far in the European LCS, but you can see what that's being, what Unicorns are reacting with is Chachi's trying to freeze bottom lane as Zven takes damage in the 2v2 top. So at least he's trying to accept the farm. He's actually pushing the wave back out now, so Vizicsacsi's getting additional experience now and farm over Expect, whereas Expect is going to have that damage reduction, that slightly added empowered auto attack after it stacks up. So honestly, that's not going to be enough the later this game goes on to hold Expect through it, because that buff will now expire around about that 27-minute mark. And after that, Irelia is just going to potentially crush Expect. If it ever gets there and Irelia has like 3 items, Expect is not really going to be able to hold that the later this goes.
Absolutely not. But you can see Trick now putting some attention on the bottom side. Gonna hop over the wall, maybe looking for the knockout. Flash in, red buff ticking. Chachi potentially in trouble. Point and click CC. Making it pretty easy. Chachi just going to flash his way out of that one, but good attention coming in from Trick.
Yeah, they had to do something about Chachi. Already level 6 to Expect, who was level 4 during that engage, so they had to turn the attention. Likewise with mid lane, G2 are recognizing the strengths for the Unicorns right now. They need to put the pressure on some of these lanes that are doing better. And honestly, Unicorns are having a much better start than we would have anticipated going up against the league leaders of G2.
Absolutely. Very commanding early game coming in from them. Of course, do give up the Infernal Dragon and the Rift Herald, but do manage to grab those kills and are out farming almost across the board here. Jungle suffering a little bit. Irelia staying even, but mid lane and AD carry both with pretty substantial leads at this stage of the game. So good performance overall. Now just have to keep our eyes on these junglers, see exactly where the next focus is going to be from both sides.
Well, for Chachi, he's trying to play a little greedy and hold this wave. Recognizes that Trick is there just in the nick of time. They don't really want to dive under that tower for now. So essentially what's happening here is Unicorns have taken full control of the top side of the map. They had a lot of wards up there, and they're setting a bush trap now for PerkZ. That's if PerkZ now goes to ward that, which a lot of players in this situation would go and keep that flank safe. PerkZ for now is just going to run up, accept the wave. They're actually going to go on PerkZ when he shows.
Party in the mid lane, miss on the body slam, sidestep. PerkZ with the footwork, not going to be enough, or is it? No, Exileh burns him down, but G2 is here for the follow-up. Ezreal ult tags move. Are they going to be able to walk away from this one? Looks like it. Well-executed dive in the mid lane.
And if PerkZ doesn't come to the bush will come to PerkZ at that point. It's very easy transition because he didn't have the vision of it coming, so no real way of escaping. In with Exileh as well allows him to pick this up. And this is how it transitions. As soon as he shows, in come the rest of the Unicorns.
Yeah.
And, Dogpile in mid. Move misses the body slam at first. So this is actually a little sloppy if you're being picky here from how much Exileh had to use just to get in there and lost a lot of health. It's nitpicky, but Exileh is starting to really get ahead in this matchup. 103 CS to 72 plus 2 kills. This is the kind of basis that would give Unicorns of Love a very strong chance at a commanding position against G2.
Absolutely, and on top of that, with such a strong composition coming in from them, getting that Azir rolling early, not going to take nearly as long to farm him up to that terrifying 3 or 4 item stage. And with the Nashor's already completed, he's going to be a pretty potent presence moving forward. Interesting though, as you said, kind of a fumble on that tower dive. They have 4 members, it works out in the end, but they're going to need to play just a little bit cleaner in the future if they want to keep executing moves like that. And
that could be a very difficult thing for G2 as this game goes forward, is actually getting to the Azir in the fights. If Exileh isn't throwing himself forward as he trades with PerkZ, moves here. Hang on, moves going to go in
slam going in, cast back, looking for the solo kill. PerkZ drops again. Mithy suddenly all alone. Trick making his way in for backup. Can they get anything back? Body slam to disengage. End of the day, Unicorns are making moves thanks to that jungler.
This has been a much better performance out of Exileh. Goes in!
No! Flash over, my God! Move! Going massive. Exileh backing him up. One more kill drop. Trick wants something back, but Chachi says no. 6-0 for the Unicorns of Love.
Where has this Unicorn squad been for the first 3 weeks of the split? This is so much better than what we've seen from them. And G2 are getting dragged into situations where they're easily collapsed upon from the Unicorns. Move has done a good job of hovering around this middle lane and just playing crowd control bot for Exileh. Even goes in over the wall to catch PerkZ out. And it's transitioning very well. They've already got themselves a 3,000 gold lead. Zven's way too late on this ult attempt. as he was trying to steal, but man, Unicorns, this is a great start for them.
We can take one more look exactly at how this play unfolded, but really just great execution here.
And you can see Exhaust is already used on Exileh, so he now has full access to his damage. Zven goes in over the Soldier, knowing that the Azir ultimate is likely available. That would have been communicated. Mithy gets taken down very easily, and from there, it's only Trick who's full tank. Yes, Rek'Sai will have damage, but 3 versus 1, it's not there, and you can see the despair a little bit from this early game from the G2 squad clearly has them a little rattled.
I would be rattled too. If I looked at an Azir 4-0-2 and a Ryze 0-3-0 and I told you it was Exileh versus PerkZ, where would you guess those scorelines were at?
Oh, I would have guessed we're in opposite land on that one.
Exactly, but Exileh is showing up, Move is making things happen, 100% kill participation for both of these guys, and this is an excellent showing thus far.
Much better, and as I was going to say before that play actually happened, it's going to become very difficult for G2 to deal with Exileh because, yes, they have a Maokai to get to the backline, but after that, Exileh uses his ult to push them away. You have a Gragas ult as well, so that at that point, there's almost nobody that can touch the Azir without Exileh making a massive mistake, and he just sits back in the fights, deals the damage, and from there the rest of the Unicorns can play frontline and additional damage as well, so the Unicorns have a pretty decent setup.
UOL going to have to defend this mid lane, trying to preserve the gold advantage they've built thus far, and PerkZ, a rough game for him so far, working on bits and pieces here, hoping to finish up that Rod of Ages shortly. Things not looking so hot quite yet, but we're only 14 minutes in, so there is time for G2 to turn this one around. However, Unicorns of Love are absolutely in the driver's seat, taking control of the map, pushing in for deeper vision, and now aiming to force down this mid lane.
I mean, they've got it. There's nobody from G2 that can actually stop that, and as we head towards the 15-minute mark, this is the largest lead Unicorns have had this split at this point in the game, so we'll see whether they can play this game out fairly cleanly. G2, we've spoken about their decision-making the later the game goes in previous weeks, and it has been fairly suspect, but I don't want to count them out quite yet. We obviously know that they've got this Ezreal, this Ryze that wants to play for a little bit later in the game, so realistically, G2 aren't at the point where their composition comes online properly yet. A good TP flank from Expect could very well get into the backline. Move was spotted out there as well. Unicorns still look like they want to fight. Zven's got to be careful of this. Azir going over.
Oh, Mithy caught out and all alone. He's going to get popped up. Great wave on the backside. Exileh unstoppable, fighting for his life. Flash over the wall. Expect hungry for blood. Trick on the way in as well. And meanwhile, Veritas will drop. Great turnaround coming in for G2.
And it's all because Chachi does not have his teleport available. Unicorns of Love were attempting to play the other side of the map where Chachi needs another 30 seconds before he can actually join that. And G2 used that very well to their advantage. However, Chachi is going to push topside, and without everybody recalling, it'll be tough to stop him. But they have a Rek'Sai ultimate coming up. They have the tunnels in the topside, so he should be stopped just in time. So G2 with a play to kind of get themselves back into this game for now.
Absolutely. Starting to even up the gold at least a little bit, reduced to that 3K advantage from 4K. But let's look at this one more time.
And here's Exileh's target priority on Mithy because he knows Zven's just going to E away, even though he doesn't have his flash. Mithy has no flash, no escape route, but from there, Zven, even through the exhaust, has dealt enough damage to Exileh with the rest of his team that this primary damage threat here for the Unicorns that has become so fed is not there to chunk through PerkZ, chunk through the rest of G2, and it's G2 focusing on the other members once Exileh's out of the fight that allows them to take control there.
Yeah, and I swear to you that that was not a level 1 Sivir and a level 1 Azir, but a spectator bug. We did not do something crazy in this patch that you missed. They don't get their ults at level 1. They don't get 2 items at level 1. But at the end of the day, I mean, really well executed from G2, and I think just a little bit of an overstep from Unicorns. However, they have enough of a gold lead that they can afford to make 1 or 2 mistakes here.
But that has been somewhat of a symptom for the Unicorns when you look at how they've played with a lead. We've seen Exileh on his Yasuo get a lot of kills and then start engaging at random times. So if he starts doing that on this Azir, then it's how Unicorns can kind of give away the game. Because aggressive players like that, while they're great, if the rest of the team can't quite compensate for you going in aggressively, that's when G2 will turn these fights around.
Absolutely, and it's the same thing we saw in the mid lane from PerkZ. If you get over-aggressive, it's very easy to get punished. Now PerkZ, you can see, playing a lot more back, learn the lesson the hard way. In this early game, we'll have to hope that Exileh can do the same and adjust that play just a little bit. Can't really afford to give up anything else at this stage of the game. Next Dragon going to be a Cloud, not a huge point of contention. Baron spawning soon as well, but the focus will still be on pushing out these waves and getting that deep vision.
Unicorns now playing with the teleport advantage can risk having Irelia up on the top side. If Expect shows top side, then there is the chance that the Unicorns can engage on the likes of PerkZ, Mithy, that they've tried time and time again now. So it is a little bit of a precarious position that they're in.
Move I like it. Taking the blue buff away from PerkZ. Definitely a good spot to be. Will make it harder for him to push out these waves. Alt goes down the middle lane. Veritas says, thanks for the mana.
Watch the reaction now when Maokai shows. What do Unicorns do here? Because they step up to the turret and they're going to look to take it. Now they're getting flanked. TP from PerkZ, but the numbers are still even here.
Looking for the knock-up. Trick gonna find move. PerkZ suddenly on the back line. Tidal wave to try to stop him from going in, but Exileh hitting hard on the side. Good disengage coming in. Jump away. Shifting Sands takes him to safety. PerkZ suddenly caught out. Aggressive flash remove. Are they going to be able to burn him down? Mid lane drops for G2. Exileh says no to the engage for the rest of the squad. UOL taking control, but they're not done yet. They push in right into the silence field. Mithy throwing down what he can. Zven dishing out damage, but they're on the back foot. Chachi jumps forward, takes his life, but the 1-for-1 pushing for more, bouncing from the Ricochet, burning down, and UOL take control.
And Unicorns managed to back away and kite back far enough that Exileh, who was under threat for the majority of that fight, could deal a lot of damage to Zven, pull back, deny the engage, and turn it around. It still wasn't clean for the Unicorns, and you can see what Chachi, how potent he can be if he gets into the backline now that he's got his items built. But the fact of the matter is, for the Unicorns, that was still a little touch and go. PerkZ got a lot of aggression from move in that engage, and it nearly cost them by Exileh having to kite back. Look at him on the bottom side of your screen. 4 members of Unicorns are going after PerkZ here, who, remember, is 1 and 4, whereas Exileh manages to get his ult out, good angle on it as well, denies G2 the rest of the engage, and then from here we can see what Chachi can do on a low health target. Fairly straightforward onto a Soraka as well. But from there, easily taken down. Doesn't really have too much tankiness, so that's the danger of Irelia in these team fighting scenarios. Is pretty much you'll get at least 1 if you can get into the backline, but getting more than that is always difficult until you have a little bit more tankiness under your belt.
Absolutely, of course. And here's where things get really hard coming in for G2. With that Rylai's now finished up. Cheeky Cask there, not going to steal the dragon away in the end, so Wind Dragon will drop over to G2, but the item advantage is growing for UOL pretty rapidly. 2-item Azir terrifying, working towards the 3rd. Ezreal, however, does have the Muramana now, so it will be a very strong spike in his favor. However, things still looking very rough for this G2 lineup. PerkZ consistently being a frontliner when he really can't afford to be.
Thing is, Chachi right now is pretty strong compared to Expect. Way up in CS, 3 kills, Trinity Force, has some magic resist, and this is the position where playing a tank into an Irelia, you kind of have to worry, because you've conceded that lane now to the point where Irelia should be able to just push up. Now, that does depend on warding, and you have to be safe when pushing up on an Irelia like that, and it's very rare that we'll see critical damage be done over in the side lane, but Exileh mid.
Fancy footwork, doesn't look like they're going to be able to get anything else. PerkZ just avoiding the tidal wave, but they will get the Emperor's Divide for free. G2 playing safe here.
And I'm keeping my eyes topside. There was a little exchange as well between Expect and Chachi, but again, its teleport advantage has swung in favor of G2 now with Expect. I'm looking for him to make another one of these teleport plays. We've seen G2 try it already when they were pulling Unicorns down the mid lane, when Unicorns were looking to engage on that mid inner tower. But you can see Chachi's already cutting down. They're going to force the TP out from Expect. If Chachi gets to the fight, G2 back themselves away. They knew what was coming there and didn't want to have to use that summoner ability.
Absolutely. G2 really giving a lot of respect over to the Unicorns here, but Unicorns, they know if they want to fight, they're going to have to try to bait this Baron. They've got the setup and the vision. Lots of damage dropping in from Exileh on that combo. Zven taking a pretty hefty chunk overall, and G2 really just forced to look for what openings Unicorns of Love will give them, and right now it's not too much.
And look at the bottom lane now. Expect is going down there just to turn that wave around. They don't want it to get too far up in the lane so that in 30 seconds time somebody has to deal with that. If they preemptively do this while the rest of G2 is fairly safe, then there's no real play for Unicorns to exploit the fact that they'd have to use a teleport for now. You can see Unicorns were looking to bait. The ward comes out fairly safely for Trick and the rest of G2 over the wall. They're able to just take control of this area inside their jungle. They don't have to worry about the Baron bait happening yet, even though the Azir will help them chunk through it fairly quickly. Unicorns are not pulling that trigger quite yet, and you can see it's because there's a Sivir top side. Now they force the Irelia to come bottom side now, and Chachi's TP has just come back up.
Even across the board for TPs now. If there's going to be a fight, it's going to be the full-on 5v5 at this stage of the game. Veritas running past the pit here, making his way to the mid lane with the rest of his team. Of course, farm leads for G2. A lot of that farm being funneled into Zven, and you can see costing PerkZ a lot here as he falls to about a 50 deficit, 60 now as we move forward.
And one of the difficulties that G2 are really going to have, or have had for the last few minutes, is that PerkZ, while being behind, has never been confident enough to step out into the side lane because the rest of the team kind of falls apart when this Azir goes aggressive. He's finally getting a little bit of confidence when it comes to being able to step to side lane, but he's heavily down in CS as well. So this is not the position G2 would have anticipated being in right now. When you look at 25 minutes into this game, you look at yesterday's games, G2 would think they'd have a lead and look to close from that game from H2K, and Unicorns haven't shown us the same level of competition that H2K have, so you can see what just one early game set of trades can do to a matchup.
Absolutely, and Unicorns of Love, of course, playing the early game incredibly well. Move and Exile, the dynamic duo to get the team this far ahead, and now everyone on the squad is benefiting. Chachi jumping in there, threatening. Spec goes forward, that's an ultimate burned out. Chachi just under the tower, does not care. Takes 50% there in the exchange. Expect knocked back to the team, Maokai on the front line, but here comes PerkZ and Zven. They dodge the wave. They're gonna have to back off. UOL too strong to fight out from under that tower.
And during that, Exileh actually didn't get damage off. He had to reposition because G2 were looking to go aggressive while he was in this small choke point that you can see the ward was at. So G2 nearly exploited Exileh being out of position. However, Unicorn still hold on. Here comes a teleport coming in. It's PerkZ and Expect. They're looking to go aggressive here.
Forward move potentially caught out. Can they get him? They run forward. Trick locked up. Taking a lot of damage here. Expect still in the back line, doing so much damage. Flash to safety over the wall, but Exileh stopping the advance in its tracks from G2.
And that's really never going to work when you look at what G2 are looking for. They don't even have a real flank there. Yes, it's coming from a side angle initially, but then you get funneled round into a head-on engage against an Azir. PerkZ gets bubbled.
Rek'Sai coming in on the backside. Trick going with two-man.
Exileh
burned down, the leading member of the team. G2, they've got their confidence back, and with that mid laner down, can they turn it around? Chachi waiting in the brush. Trick on the front line. It's going to be a game of chase the Irelia here in the G2 jungle. Flash forward from Zven. The slow starts. Dash flash. Fancy footwork. Good moves from Chachi to make it out to safety, but G2 finally get the pick they need.
And realistically, Exileh getting caught out during that. It was a good ultimate to get the flank off. Disrupts the rest of the Unicorns. Man, watch this flash knockup that comes from Trick here. This is the importance of the flank because it draws everybody now into the Rek'Sai. Flash knockup on Exileh and Veritas secures the kill, and that's what G2 needed. Unicorns even had a lot of their disengage tools during this engagement. You can see Azir ult was up, Gragas ult was up, all of these tools to avoid fights, but the problem is the good flank from Trick secures G2 perhaps a way back into this game. Unicorns had a decent lead and were looking to extend that, and now G2 have started to turn the ball in their favor.
Absolutely have, and you can see how tough it is to protect that Azir when he's sitting on the front line. If that flank ever does come through, hard for the team to use those disengage abilities effectively, and G2 capitalizing very well. They've burned a lot to get that flank, however, a lot to shift the gold, at least a little bit less against them. 3K advantage maintained here for the Unicorns of Love. Cloud Drake now live. G2 could look to double down there. Maybe potentially a catalyst for a fight here in the mid game.
Could be. It is only Cloud though, so I feel like Unicorns will look at that and be like,
that's why I gave it the strong. That's why I gave it the strong maybe.
I'm not really invested in 15 extra movement speed for now, but that is G2's third Drake of the game. Now they want to go aggressive. That's 3 members of Unicorns there. TP has not been used yet by Chachi to try and get into this fight, but there are good wards around the top side of this fight if it were to kick off.
Yeah, decent poke comes in from the Ezreal ultimate. Good on Zven, hits 3. But Hylissang just going to be able to heal that up, and no real advantage gained there. Always looking for that flank, though. If they get the opportunity, they will be able to take a fight. They just need to get through that Azir before they do.
Again, look at what Unicorns are going to do as a reaction now. That's the next play because Expect is coming bottom side. Remember, he used his TP. Chachi could very easily drop back in this scenario if he doesn't want to push his advantage bottom lane. The other option is he holds Expect in this duo lane, in this bottom lane here, looks to push forward. But you can see, look, he sat back in the lane. The rest of Unicorns are backing off as well, so they're just looking for information right now. They're not committing to a play because Exileh recalled completely to pick up what I believe was the rest of his Rabadons. Yeah, it was.
Of course, 3 items. Not a whole lot of defensive options here, not choosing to go for the Zhonya's. Knows that he is the big damage threat for his team. Wants to be able to show up even bigger in these team fights. But things are finally starting to even out here overall. 4K gold advantage, yes. But PerkZ finally finishing up those core items. Ezreal as well, just now finishing up that Blade of the Rune King. So G2 starting to make moves to get back here. Rest of the team on Unicorns of Love, though, still control the map.
Chachi does not feel confident sitting around Expect right now, which, when you have a 60 CS difference, plus 3 kills, you would think is fairly frustrating, at least for Chachi, but you can see the itemization that Expect has. Has himself Senpai Cape, an extra giant spell, some MR in there as well, just give himself everything. That Rift Herald buff has now expired for Expect, so that is no longer a factor. But Chachi doesn't feel like he can actually press his advantage too often. He's also got to be careful that Trick doesn't come across or PerkZ doesn't TP in. But look, TP's still not available for PerkZ right now. So there's always that option where Expect can catch out Chachi, and then in comes the Ryze, but not right now.
Shoutouts to Veritas for fast fingers on that spell shield. Consistently blocks the Ezreal ult. Minor thing, but could be important moving forward. Of course, they thought about starting up the dragon. They did throw down the barrel, but Zven using that ult to scout out to make sure they didn't have to worry about contesting Baron quite yet. G2 doing their best to control their jungle. Unicorns of Love continuing to move in. And clearly Baron is going to be the next target focus. 1 blue trinket drops. Will be cleared out here shortly by move. Zven and Mithy maintaining the middle lane, and G2 getting as much farm as they can. They know they're going to have to fight for this eventually. Move's teasing me. He's not sure if he wants to start it. I'm not sure if he wants to start it, but he keeps hitting it like he does.
Well, I mean, that's the thing for Unicorns is they've slowed down fairly rapidly.
Oh my, whew, God.
Still got the damage out of Exileh, though.
Yeah, the death cap, I was a little skeptical over the Zhonya's, but we're seeing the kind of work that you can put in when you've got that much raw damage potential.
And that's what I was saying, though, about actually being able to get onto the Azir. He clearly feels the same, is that if he's playing correctly, nobody should be able to actually touch him. So the benefit of the Zhonya's, while it is nice, is not quite as necessary in his mind right now. Just get that extra damage, chunk people down.
Yeah, why doubt yourself? Assume that you were going to be in the right place.
Yesterday you said tomorrow.
Get it in there. Good reference.
Here comes this play, though, with the Ryze. This wasn't a TP play, but this is Chachi being too far
in. Oh, footwork from Chachi is just phenomenal. Dashing his way out of that one, and the rest of his team has dropped onto the Baron.
But its double TP is available here for G2, and it's already being pulled out from the Ryze. Unicorns have to back themselves away.
PerkZ instantly gets an opportunity to go in, Expect making sure that Chachi cannot attend that party. G2 now going to back off. They save the day here. They do have to burn the TP. Everything in the end, though, still very even, but these teams eager to fight.
That was fairly well played by Chachi in the end of things. Cutting into the lane rather than dropping back. Zven takes some damage.
Hop over the wall. Exileh does a lot. Have to make his way out of that one. Flash burned in the end. The looming threat of Veritas and Exileh. So much damage potential between these two in a team fight situation.
Man, G2 are using more in these little trades than Unicorns. You can see they traded the Sivir ult now for the Ezreal flash. Previously, they traded pretty much a little of Chachi's time and the attempted Baron start. Oh,
good arcane shift coming in from Zven. Gonna be happy with that one. Soldiers dash in, but now Exileh has no way to disengage. Trick wants to start the fight. Ezreal ult across the backside, but the bubble stopping this one for now. Here comes the Maokai. PerkZ on the front lines. Down goes the Azir once again. G2 looking to take control. Flashed over. Chachi resets in the back wave, trying to kill more. Burning through so many members of G2. They're knocked up, but Chachi's going to fall. They don't manage to get anyone else. Veritas dropping as well. G2 retake control of the fight and the mid lane. All with one catch.
And again, it's Exileh playing forward in these fights, trying to get damage out, which of course he needs to do. But at this point, it's G2 always finding him, and the rest of the Unicorns aren't quite able to act as peel for him. And they need to keep this Azir alive to be able to chunk through this massive tank setup that G2 have. I mean, even the Ryze is difficult to deal with for somebody like Veritas right now, who is on 2 items and is looking for an Infinity Edge, but move.
Oh, they're just going to back off the Baron, pick up the jungler. Call that a consolation prize. Hylissang, another one to add to the list. PerkZ more than enough mana. Taking his time on this one. Now on a killing spree, and an instant shift in momentum here as G2 finally secure a gold lead.
Yeah, and this game has now become all about G2, because with this Baroned up set of minions here, they're going to be able to start putting the pressure back on to the Unicorns. And let's take another look at this. So Exileh stretches out to get some damage down onto Zven. Doesn't quite connect because of the arcane shift coming out. And look, Exileh's pushing forward into 3. They don't have full vision of the area that Exileh was moving into, so forced to flash out already. He's low on mana, and he runs into the pack. PerkZ is already on that pink ward as Exileh starts moving forward, and you have to expect that a Ryze in that scenario is going to go for that lockdown onto the primary damage dealer here, and there's not a whole lot more that they can do. Look, Veritas is trying to output damage, but again, he's way far forward, takes a big hit of damage from, I believe, Zven in that exchange, and from there, it's an easy fight for G2 to pick up.
And you can see him just with that front line coming in from Maokai, forced to hit that tank for the entirety of the fight. The Ricochet going to hit everybody else, but his primary source of damage, those auto attacks, really not showing up overall. And small missteps coming in from the Unicorns of Love once again, counting against them. So ahead in the early game. And now PerkZ getting that confidence back. He's hungry for blood. Moving in, on to move, going down. Silence over the wall, on the hunt, burned. UOL running.
Man, this is going to be a tough game for the Unicorns to look back on if it does in fact go G2's way, because they had such a good start. The 6-0 lead. Everything was going towards Exileh in that middle lane. They were looking to close out the game against G2, but they got stalled out. That bottom lane engage really disrupted Unicorn's momentum, and then they ended up just around Baron for a whole lot of time with no real options, and without being able to control G2 fully, there was no real way of them getting further objectives in this game, and now you can see G2 have turned this back around on them, and they're very rapidly pushing towers down and extending their lead.
Absolutely, but Unicorns of Love aren't out yet. The Azir is still incredibly strong, and Chachi is determined to split push out these side lanes. They're going to start to even up the gold here once again, and these 2K differences at 35 minutes aren't going to be the end of the world. But if G2 can break an inhibitor, Unicorns of Love are going to have a lot more to worry about than just this.
I mean, the thing is, G2 is just going to push so infinitely fast. That tower's going to die, maybe? No, it teleport completes.
PerkZ on the front line. Can they do it? Exileh dishing out a lot of damage, but he's just hitting the tanky front line move. Health bar burning down. Suddenly Expect is in. Great Emperor's Divide, but pop goes the mid lane for Unicorns of Love. Once again, aggressive moves coming in for G2, and they're set to end here.
Yeah, Trick comes back with the team. Looks like they want to finish this. Chachi tries to go in.
Looking for more. Silence Field goes down. Chachi locked up for a brief moment. Tenacity paying off for him. They move forward. Expect out of mana. Mithy doing what he can to heal the front line, but has to stay away from this Irelia. PerkZ is on the side. Maybe looking for more. Chachi knocked up, snared up, locked down, but he's running. He's trying to make a dash for the support. He's trying to make the hero play, but he's not going to have the health. Zven on a rampage, and G2 in control.
These fights are taking so long because nobody from the Unicorns can effectively deal with the tank and the tankiness that G2 are bringing here. When you look at this setup, G2 are so incredibly difficult to kill without the Azir being up that Unicorns are running out of options.
Move, drop, Zven now unstoppable. Slowly chipping away at this base and taking lives left and right. 4K gold lead now in their favor. Finally going to back off here, a brief respite. Coming in for the side of Unicorns of Love.
Yeah, it's just that the Baron buff ran out, the Azir was coming up, they don't want to overextend, so after being behind for pretty much the entire game, G2 are going to play this one out carefully. They don't want to give anything back to the Unicorns. You can see now we've got a Void Staff on top of Exile's build already. No Armor Pen yet for Veritas. He's working on that next. Is going to need that really before he can chunk through. You can see, look at this, look at what Expect has now. He's got a Randuin, he's got the Sunfire Cape, he's got Frozen Heart. Like, it's so difficult to actually chunk through this Maokai for anybody other than that Azir that I really don't know whether it's going to be possible. And that graph.
I mean, this is the story of the game. All of this advantage was put into Exile. Move and Exile working hard to build this up, and at the end of the day, it is Exile who's going to lose it for them. Getting flanked by G2, getting caught out when all your gold's on one character and that character goes down, not a whole lot of options.
Hey man, if we're CSIing that crime scene, it's not the most difficult one. It's pretty much an open and shut case on where things went wrong.
Absolutely.
For Unicorns. That big swing of gold back into G2's favor. And I mean, now they're at a point where you just can't kill him. GA for the Ryze as well. You've got a QSS on Zven, so anybody that does start locking him down, if he gets bubbled or anything like that, get away.
Yeah, absolutely, and insanely difficult now with his inhibitor open. Not only that, the pressure on the bottom side. You're gonna have to deal with even more as both the Elder Dragon and the Baron are now set to spawn. And triple Cloud Drake, while not terrifying, significantly harder to deal with when you do have that Elder Dragon buff. And 5 members can appear on you in an instant.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point where you're like, oh, you actually start seeing people go super quick, which, I mean,
just
makes
free
starting
Swifty
the fight
boots.
good. Yeah, it's nice. It's a shame it takes 3 dragons and then a subsequent dragon.
I'm not arguing that the Cloud
visible
Drake should be a higher priority. I'm just saying that you get this late in the game, you give them this many, it is going to give you something back.
It's good for starting the fight at that point. You can just get in there, Maokai runs at you at full
Makes
power.
your home guard TP just a little bit scarier.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is always like, you know, the problem with movement speed with the diminishing returns, by the time you get there, it's like, hey, I'm amplifying not as much as if I, yeah. It's one of those situations where the Elder Dragon is going to be important a lot for the damage, predominantly.
Absolutely. And of course, whatever dragon you take, it will increase the true damage coming in from that Elder Dragon. So, at the end of the day, all equally valuable in that one incidence.
Well, it's, I don't want to say a tough choice right now. I mean, if G2 go Elder Dragon, Unicorns can try and start the Baron, but it's going to be a tough one. I actually don't know whether G2 are even going to look to prioritize Elder Dragon. They've got bot lane pushing in as it is, so they can fairly easily, you know, commit on the top side, and it's that little bit tougher to actually get up to. But Chachi obviously has that TP.
Really interested to see if UOL can keep a strong front line in what could be the coming fights. If they can keep that Azir safe, he's still a massive threat for them. But if G2 get one more flank, this game will be over.
I mean, honestly, after the next fight, the game's pretty much over.
Yeah, that's true. It's 40 minutes. Everybody has a lot of gold. Elder Dragon Baron.
Oh. If Exile can find himself a safe spot, there is still hope. Hang on.
Oh, TP coming in.
PerkZ wants to end.
Bold move coming in here. Can they disengage? G2 running. UOL should be able to get something back, but they're not going to be able to TP back to the base. PerkZ making the hero play. Expect ensuring that no one can retreat. Exile all alone. Trick stopping the backs. Good flash from Trick. My God, the game is now going to end. G2 may have wanted to end it in style. This is exactly what they're going to get. Double kill for Zven. Triple kill for Zven. And at the end of the day...
No!
Are you kidding me? Game continues to go. PerkZ trying to get something back. Exile doing decent damage, but they're diving on top of him. Zven, now legendary. The unofficial Quadra, the unofficial Penta. Moving in, inhibitor goes down. PerkZ says thank you very much as he closes out the game in fashion. It may not have been clean, but G2 have to be happy with that win.
Well, they'll be happy with the end of the game for sure, even if it was a little bit messy with PerkZ going, hey guys, can you hold them 4v5 for now? I can end this game, and then getting trolled by the inhibitor. But I don't feel like G2 will be particularly happy with how this game started, because man, Unicorns ran all over them for the first 15 minutes of this game.
I was actually incredibly impressed by everything that they brought to the table here in the early game. Move and Exile working as a team, punishing PerkZ, a player who's known to be incredibly aggressive in lane. very good. And I thought if they can transition this into the mid game, and they really started to, and it was only once G2 had enough gold to be able to be comfortable to flank that things really started to move against them. So I would say still a good performance in the early game from Unicorns of Love. Late game, though, obviously still needing some work.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a surprising performance at the same time against G2, who typically we've seen, you know, at least typically go even in the early game. And now we're in a situation where, like, you look at the Unicorns, 6 kills to nothing. Everything seemed to be going their way. You look at that and you think, like yesterday's game between G2 and H2K, that's the kind of game where you look at it and you're thinking, well, Unicorns should just win this. If this was a scrim, we probably go to the next game, and suddenly you don't have to deal with a 4-1 Azir. The problem is, G2 play it out, and they get good flanks a couple of times and really punish Unicorns for not being able to do anything on them.
And I like that they took a lot of risks here in the late game. They knew that they were just going to continue to get choked out, so they continued to look for those flanks. They continued to make bold moves, and for a long time it was like they are trading so many summoner spells for so little. They are giving up so much, but at the end of the day, all it took were 1 or 2 flanks to really bring themselves back to the game, so those bold moves really won it out in the end.
Yeah, they did. Honestly, a lot of this early game was about the difference in junglers. And as we look back at the first blood that happened, Move was very, very active out on the map. Around the mid lane specifically here as well. You can see PerkZ gets pulled down into the rest of the lane, and then Exileh just goes in with the ult. Good flash in from Move. It allows them to pick up PerkZ from that scenario. So honestly, it's those kind of plays that we want to see more of from the Unicorns in the early game, and I'm glad that they're doing it on more meta champions.
Well, and as we move forward in the game too, the plays continued to be very good for them. It was only once the flanks started to come in, but if we look at their mid-game plays, kind of around the 10, 11-minute mark, you can see exactly how well they are able to execute. Move, once again, the hero here for the squad. Exileh more than happy to follow up. Another quick kill picked up onto PerkZ. The rest of G2 kind of just scrambling to get something back.
And look at it. Mithy exhausts Exileh in a situation where you have a tank and your healer there at that point. You've got a support and a tank. So you're not able to actually capitalize on any of the slow. Of course, it's to reduce the damage that's coming out from the Azir as well. But from there, that's when they choose to engage. And suddenly Azir has access to everything. In comes Chachi. Good teleport usage onto the ward that initially started that play from Move. He places the ward in the bush to get the knock up, and Chachi TP's in on it. So Unicorns working a lot better in coordination than we've seen perhaps in the last couple of games from them.
Yeah, executing incredibly well in the lane swap in the early game. I mean, keeping up with G2, I think something we have to praise them for, and then transitioning it into these ganks, into this mid lane pressure. But unfortunately, I mean, at a certain point, it did go wrong. And once G2 were able to get those flanks as we start to approach the late game, Unicorns of Love just consistently getting caught out. We can see it here on your screen. Keep your eyes on Exileh. He's pretty much the man who decides the fate of these team fights.
Honestly, though, Trick is just doing so much work as well, because he catches out Exileh that time with a flash over the bubble to get the knock up. Then Exileh has to burn his flash, moves too far forward, PerkZ flashes in on him, locks him down, and G2 can just easily clean up the rest of this fight. Chachi can only do so much, and with so many high health targets for the majority of this fight, the Irelia cannot do enough fast enough to be able to tip that fight back in the favor of the Unicorns of Love. You can see G2 getting ready for their second game here, discussing perhaps what went wrong in the beginning and what went so right for the rest of the game.
Right at the end, exactly. And you got to wonder if they're going to play as aggressively. Those are sweet shoes. You have those?
No, I don't have those.
I think you're literally wearing those exact shoes, just about.
Close, but not the same. No,
that's my high-quality analysis for you.
Of course, comfy footwear while on show.
Absolutely.
You know, smart footwear when feet are in shot.
Murder the footwear point. But I mean, at the end of the day, G2, yes, they have to make adjustments. They can be happy for the win. And for Unicorns of Love, similar story. Have to be happy with the early game, but really just need to tune it up. But just to update you guys on the action.